Hello and welcome to another episode of Guess That Record. I am your host, Jackson Reed. This is the show where we talk about music and try to figure out which album I pulled from my collection. Thanks again for tuning into another episode, and you're not going to be disappointed with this one as we have a major guest on the show today. He's the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame guitarist for The Police, where he can be heard on legendary songs like Every Breath You Take, Message in a Bottle, and Roxanne. His upcoming tour, The Cracked Lens and a Missing String, begins on May 30th, visiting cities in the Northeast US through June. I'm so honored to welcome Andy Summers to Guess That Record. How are you doing, Andy?
I'm fine, thank you.
Awesome. Where are we talking to you from today?
Los Angeles.
Oh, lovely. I haven't been to LA in like 7 years, so it's pretty high on my list of places I want to get back to.
Beautiful
Uh,
day.
Such an honor to be speaking with you today, because I'm a huge fan of the Police, and they're such a great and important band, and so it's a real honor to be speaking with you today.
All right, thank you.
I wanted to start off by asking you about your approach to playing guitar. Because I'm a musician and a guitar player myself, and it's interesting to play these Police songs because they're quite challenging from a technical perspective, but it's also interesting because it's a lot of like rhythm playing over as opposed to lead playing. So when you're creating a guitar part for a song, are you more interested in sort of making sure that the guitar part suits the song, even if that means no solo?
Well, it was a real wrong thought about the solos because when the Police started, we were right in the middle of the punk scene in London. And of course, a lot of those guys couldn't play at all. And so the guitar solo was the kind of a hallmark of a previous era, with Jeff Beck and Eric Clapton and great guitar soloists. So in the punk scene, they threw all that out. I was a virtuoso soloist, been playing for years, and so that was a bit of a drag for me, to be quite honest. But that's the way it was in that scene because as I say, the solo is like the hallmark of the older guys, and we weren't supposed to play solos. Of course, I could play my ass off. So some of the attention went to the way I played behind the singer, the kind of chord voicings I used, stuff like that. And so people think that's what I did. Well, it's something of what I did, but not all of it by any means whatsoever. So as far as I'm concerned, when you're playing behind the singer, especially in a trio, you cut the guitar parts to suit the song and to suit the singer's voice. In case of the Police, I was lucky because I was a pretty sophisticated player with a lot of harmonic knowledge. And the singer, Sting, had the ear for it. He could hear it. I could play weirder voicings and different kinds of chords than standard. Certainly a punk band player would never play a bar chord or something like that. So I went to sort of alternate voicings of the chords, and so that became a hallmark of the Police musically.
Yeah. And it all got started, of course, on this album here, Outlandos de More, which still, it's kind of amazing to listen to it and think like, wow, this came out in 1978 because it's still really fresh.
Very fresh, yeah.
And I wanted to talk with you about the song So Lonely because like I love the tone on that song. Like it's just the way the chords sound with the strumming and all that. It's just a really good sound. So how did you kind of get the guitar to sound like that on that track?
Well, without putting it on and listening to it, I think mostly in that, I had my Telecaster that lasted for many years. Well, I still have it. Lasted for years, all the way through the Police, right from the beginning to the end. In the studio, I can't remember exactly, but I probably was playing through a Fender Twin. I'm trying to think if there's chorus on the guitar or not, because we didn't have chorus at the beginning. That came about halfway through. So it's something like that, I can't tell you, oh, I've got a very magical way that I did. No, I didn't. I played the rhythm and I played a kind of out there solo on it. Well, that's about it, really. Yeah.
And then another track from that album I was curious about was Can't Stand Losing You. And specifically the sort of interlude part in the middle of the song. I'll try and explain it as best as I can for any non-guitar players out there, but you use this interesting technique where you sort of bar your fingers across the frets, and
Yeah.
then it sort of shifts the harmonics up so that you can use harmonics in the same key, which is such a brilliant technique. And I was wondering like how you kind of figured out how to do that.
Well, actually, that's a nice question because yeah, I got known for doing that. These harmonics like this, which you learn how to do, and I was taught how to do that by Lenny Breau, who is the greatest Canadian guitarist. He's no longer with us. He died in Los Angeles some years ago. But I had a couple of lessons with Lenny Breau. When I was on tour with the Police, the first time I met him was in Nashville, and he came to my hotel, and we sat around for a couple of hours, and he showed me a lot of stuff. Fantastic guitarist, and he's Canadian, and so it was something that I had. Can you see that? And I was able to. Most guitarists didn't do that, and they didn't know it, but I knew it, and I knew it from Lenny, and so I put it in the middle of Can't Stand Losing You, where it worked really well, this sort of chiming effect of that. And, I've always used it, played it,
Mm-hmm.
Other guys have gotten onto it, and some people have taken it a long way out. I mean, you have to work out your chords that you can play with it because you can't really have repeating octaves or anything, and it doesn't work. You've almost got to have 6 different notes to make it really be at its best. I've
Mm-hmm.
worked that out. There's a number of chord voicings that where you can do that without repeating anything, and some of them are pretty strange, but it's a
Yeah.
right hand technique where you pluck the lowest note with your thumb, and then you off the top. It's difficult to show without a guitar, but
Yeah. It's almost kind of like tapping in a way.
it's a bit like tapping. It's a more sort of outside technique where
Mm-hmm.
you're not, you're playing this, holding a note and hitting the string with a pick. It's the guitar can do a lot of things. I never got into tapping. I've sort of looked at it a few times, but I grew up, my charts technique all came from another area, which was really jazz guitar. So my focus was always being able to play great long lines over moving chords. I grew up, listening to Wes Montgomery and people like that. And so my ear was trained to be able to hear all these other, outside of the scales kinds of approaches to harmony.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And then on the next album, Regatta de Blanc, I don't think we can talk about this album without talking about Message in a Bottle. I've heard you say it's your favorite Police song, and I can definitely see where you're coming from with that opinion. So, would you say that it's like the song that defines the band's sound?
Well, it is to me. I think it's kind of got it all. I mean, it's a great song structure with a nice chorus, but it moves through. It's got an A, B, and a C section, and the riff is a beautiful way of outlining the chord that's not standard by any means, but it's got this sophisticated verse thing with the great guitar signature, and then it goes into a bit more rock with that first thing, and then it drops down again. Again, that's another place. It's in C sharp minor, but it ends that third section on an F sharp minor chord, which of course I was able to do those harmonics.
Mhm.
That was a perfect place for it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's I know actually, and it's interesting with the riff because if you listen carefully, there's actually another like a harmonizing guitar part under
yeah,
the
there
main
is.
riff. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I play
Um
that. Yeah, I mean, I can't play it live.
mhm.
Occasionally, yeah, might do something like, well, so I play with the band in Brazil and we play it, I play the line, and so, once in a while I just throw in like the harmonic line instead of the standard line, just to kind of, I don't know, be a little bit kinky with the guitar part. Like, what's that? Back to the standard. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's fun. Yeah,
Yeah. It truly is like an all-time great song though, because
yeah,
it's simple, but it's hard to play, like you got to stretch your
yeah,
hands all the
yeah.
way
I see guys
across.
trying to play it and they can't play it. Yeah,
Yeah.
you're gonna have to
And
stretch.
and it's just the fact that my band and I we played it at a show earlier this year, and it was in
Yeah.
like a club with 100 people, And when you
Mm.
get to the end where it's sending out an
Yeah.
SOS, everyone's singing along and the adrenaline's
Yeah,
pumping
it's
and it's
amazing. Yeah, yeah.
yeah,
Well, we feel very good about that. Yeah.
yeah.
It was like, it was years ago, but one's life is extended in this club in Canada, so on and so forth. It's a very nice feeling that, yeah, I like it.
Yeah. This episode of Guess That Record is sponsored by Marvel Marketing. Marvel Marketing is an award winning digital marketing company headquartered in Calgary, Alberta, Canada, working with clients in different industries from all over North America, including Canada, the United States, and Mexico. Marvel Marketing services include website design and development, website maintenance, search engine optimization, public relations services, and social media management, amongst others. To find out more, visit marvelmarketing.ca. This episode of Guess That Record is sponsored by Guitarworks. One of Canada's top independent music stores for over 30 years, Guitarworks carries a huge selection of musical instruments from the biggest brands in music, including Gibson, Fender, Martin, Yamaha, and Paul Reed Smith. Visit any of their 3 Calgary locations or shop online at guitarworks.ca and join the Guitar Perks program to earn money back with every purchase. Guitarworks, your total guitar store. This episode of Guess That Record is also sponsored by Recordland, home to the largest selection of music in Canada. Buy, sell, and trade tapes, CDs, and vinyl. Located in Calgary's Inglewood neighborhood on 9th Avenue Southeast, visit them in person or on Instagram at Recordland Calgary. Then the next album, Zenyatta Mondatta, I wanted to ask you about the song Driven to Tears.
Yeah.
And so the one part that always caught my ear was the guitar solo. And it's really interesting because it comes in hot and it's got this kind of twisted, sort of sinister feel to it.
Yeah.
So, what scale were you using for that
Well, it's
solo?
a kind of I can almost see it. I think it's in A minor, and I think I played some pretty out notes on probably flat fifths because I was trying to match the lyric, which is pretty dark, about not good feelings. It's like a blues in a way. So it's
Hmm.
you couldn't do a really chirpy, unthinking rock solo on it. It had to match the lyric. For some reason, I'm thinking G, D, A. It was against the harmony, so it was sort of atonal. It was more like an atonal lick. Well, not lick, a solo too, because that's what I wanted, and I think it really works very well.
Yeah.
I
It
didn't know if the song was in A minor. I did not play A minor pentatonic like a blues thing. I went to another place with it, which felt very appropriate to me. So it was a deliberate choice.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then on the next album, Ghost in the
Ah,
Machine.
you just go out and buy all of it. We're going to
Yeah.
keep going here.
Um, now that record starts with the track Spirits in the Material World. And I've seen a few interviews with Stewart where he said that that's the most difficult Police song to play. Do you agree with that assessment?
Not necessarily. Maybe his rhythm was difficult. I mean, for me, it's interesting in the fact that it uses minor ninth chords, but with the extended the ninth under the triad, if you like. So if you're playing D minor, which is, I think, oh, did we do this? Maybe we did it in A minor.
Yeah.
Say it was a D minor chord, D minor triad at the 10th fret, so you'd have D, A, F. And then the ninth would be the E, so you'd have to stretch your finger up to get that ninth. And the line is on that, with the from the E on the fourth string to the D, and then down to the next chord, which we see I think. But that's what that sound. It's pretty sophisticated, but it works well as a, kind of a, it's a sort of almost like a jazz chord that works pretty well in the sort of pop song thing as the riff. Yeah. So, of course, I could play it with no problem.
Hmm.
Again, it's a bit of a stretcher, but yeah,
Yeah,
it wouldn't
it
be for
definitely
everyone.
is. Another track from that album I wanted to go over was Secret Journey, which has such a cool guitar part.
We
And
never played it oddly.
Uh-huh.
I don't, I mean, when we did it, I thought, oh, this is a good one. This is going to be great to play live. But we did it once or twice, and then, some weird reason, Sting sort of refused to ever sing it ever again. That was the
Hmm.
end of that. I think we did it
Interesting.
2 times, and I can't remember much about it, except at the time I thought, oh, this is going to be great, this one.
Yeah.
We never incorporated it into our repertoire, weirdly.
It's got almost kind of like a spacey science fiction feel
Mm.
to it, I find.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then we get to the end here, the big album, of course, Synchronicity,
Mm.
which in my opinion I think is one of the best albums of all time. And I would say my favorite track on the album, at least to play on guitar, is Synchronicity 2. And I think that track is one of the great riff songs. Like it's just each section of that song has its own,
Yeah.
intricate
Yeah, it
riff.
is. It's a lot of fun to play. And, I have a trio in South America that I usually play with every year. We tried different things over the years, but we play all Police hits now, and it's become very successful. We often open the show with Synchronicity too.
Mhm.
It's a great one to play. It's a lot of fun because of all those parts, yeah, a very, very good guitar song. Yeah.
Were when you were creating that song, like were all the riffs in it like created with the song in mind, or were they sort of individual parts that you put together from other
I listened to the
things?
lyrics and then gradually kind of worked out how to, fit it all together, because it starts with a kind of a minor seventh chord pull off. Well, it's not a straight minor seventh because you're adding in, starts on F sharp minor seven. You're adding in the ninth above it as a pull off lick. I don't know if you're a guitar player, you understand it.
Hmm.
You're using your little finger to
Yeah,
pull
it's
the
sort of
lick
like that. Yeah.
before it goes into da 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 A major da, and da, 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 da. Yeah. I mean, it's not technically very difficult, but you've got to be musical to play it and play it with, the correct, rhythm and everything and all the
Hmm.
parts.
Yeah,
Yeah. But it's an exciting song, and it's a great one to kick off a show with, you know.
for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, I've been doing that.
And there was one more song I wanted to go over, which was Don't Stand So Close to Me, but specifically the 1986 version of the song. Um, so it was I think it was on the Greatest Hits, the first Police Greatest Hits album, um, that came out in 1986 there. Do you remember putting that track together?
Well, no, it's a strange one because, obviously that had been a gigantic, we'd sold over 1 million copies of that in England when it came out. It was a huge hit. And then the more human side to the story was the band broke up in 84. Of course, the record company, they're all like freaked out because we were the biggest band in the world. They were trying to get us back together, and it was all so desperate. And they managed to get us together to be in this studio in Swiss Cottage in London. And so we're all there, it was sort of an atmosphere. Sting didn't want to write any new songs. There was no new song, but he thought we could do a new version of Don't Stand So Close to Me. But it gets more complicated than that. So we had to come up, well, what are we going to do? How are we going to... But it got complicated and it came out differently than we expected. But the reason was because Stuart, the drummer, had been out playing polo on a horse the night before. He fell off and broke his collarbone. He couldn't play, could not
Hmm.
play the drums. He had a drum kit set up. He'd just come out of hospital. So I can't even remember what we did on it, but nothing very radical. And I think they put it out. So that's the sort of sad human side of that
Yeah.
story.
Well, I think, yeah, it probably was one of the last, it might have been the last recording you guys did together. So,
Well, there's
yeah.
many live recordings have come out since. There's all
Mhm.
sorts of things have come out. Yeah.
In the studio. Yeah.
Well, in the studio, yeah, I was
Yeah.
probably in.
Now, to move ahead to the present, you've got a lot of things on the go right now. And of course, the biggest thing coming up is your tour, which is called The Cracked Lens and a Missing String.
Mhm.
So you've been doing this show for a little while now, and I think it would be great to explain to the listeners who might want to come check out a show what it's like and what they can expect.
Well, okay, this is like where, I've always, well, since the beginning of the police, I've had this sort of sub career with photography, and I've done over 60 exhibitions. I've just got back a few days ago from Japan, where I played at shows in Tokyo and Kyoto, and there's one up in Amsterdam. So yeah, I'm pretty active with it. So I started when I was in the police because I had so much time on my hands. So I turned to photography and found out it was a real natural for me. And so finally, after all these years, I brought the guitar playing and photography together. So on stage, I have a big cinema screen, and I've got various sequences that have been carefully worked out, and we run them, and I play different kinds of music to each sequence of imagery. Some with backing tracks, some just straight solo guitar, and I go through a number of different musical places with it, including a whole Brazilian section that's really beautiful. And then it ends with the police. But yeah, it's become popular.
Hmm.
People like it. It's got great reviews. So I played in Canada. I did it in Canada already.
Yeah. And when looking at your career, you've played to massive crowds in the biggest stadiums all over the world.
Hmm.
So is it a nice change of pace to be doing something that's much more intimate like this?
Yeah, it is. Well, I thought about it. I certainly didn't want to play in clubs. That's out. Obviously, I can't fill stadiums with this sort of thing. This is really more like an art show.
Hmm.
It's very unique. I haven't seen anybody else doing this at all. So yeah, we're planning like um, yeah, kind of medium-sized theaters, and it's turned out to be a real winner because one thing I found out and wasn't aware of is that the US, anyway, has got these beautiful little sort of Art Deco theaters, cinemas all over the country. They're
Hmm.
everywhere. And they're not necessarily right in the middle of a main town. They might be on the outskirts, but they have very good attendance and they're exactly the right size. 800,000 people. And I found that this is exactly the right size because we've got the screen up, everyone can see it, and I can connect with the audience. You could not do this. You couldn't do this show in a stadium. It would be pointless.
Yeah.
Uh, so I've been enjoying it. I did about 40 shows last year. I think we've got 12 or 14 coming up in June.
Awesome.
And
Yeah.
I meet a lot of people. I talk to the audience. It's a good vibe. People like it, and it's different.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
And then, talking about your photography, you also had a photography book come out recently.
Well, the most recent one, yeah. Well, actually, within the last year, I always think it was last week. It's well, here it is. This is
Nice.
the very latest one. It's called A Series of Glances.
And it's funny because actually the last episode of the podcast that I recorded was with the great music photographer Garrett Mankiewicz.
Is English guy?
Yeah, he worked with the Rolling Stones and Jimi
Yeah, I think I've
Hendrix.
been photographed by him. Yeah, I can't
Yeah.
remember his name.
So yeah, it's a nice coincidence that I just did an episode that was all about
Mm.
photography, and now we're talking about it with you because it's
Yeah.
clearly a big passion for you. So what's all in the book basically that you
I
can
can show
see?
you page by page. You've got to. Well, it's photographs that I've shot all over the world
Hmm.
with my particular photographic sensibility. I mean, I mean, there's pictures of people in India, people in Tibet, people in Spain, all sorts of things. I mean, it's a pretty, it's interesting. The interesting thing about doing a book like this of this size, because it's quite big, is how you sequence. It's like making a movie. It took me about 6 months to actually do the sequencing on and off, not 6 months straight, but going in and out, looking at it, I think I want to move that, then I want to move this. It's a process. It's like making records,
Hmm.
sequencing, editing. Why does this play that off so well off that? And I really enjoyed the process, and I'm working on a color one now, all
Cool.
color. Mm.
Cool. And then I guess there's also you do have one other book right now, the short story book as well, right?
I came out, yeah, about 2 years ago. Yeah.
Mhm. It was published by our friends at the podcast here, Rocket 88 Books. So
Hmm.
yeah, I figured I'd give them a shout out as well.
Oh,
Um,
sure.
yeah,
Well, that's gone well. We sell it at the shows. It goes really well. And yeah, that was a kind of a fun thing to do. that I actually, because I'd been writing these stories over a number of years, not hundreds of years, but 3 or 4 years maybe. And until I had a whole collection, I'd get different ideas from it until I pulled it all together and then edited it into this book. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Well, we have reached the end of the interview. I want to thank Andy Summers for taking the time to appear on the podcast. You're such a huge legend in music with one of the most legendary bands of all time. So it was so incredible to get to speak with you. Your tour starts May 30th in the Northeast US.
Yeah, that's right. I'll
Mhm.
be out for a couple of weeks at least. Yeah.
Right on.
More later in the year.
Andy's tour, The Cracked Lens and a Missing String, begins on May 30th and runs through June 16th in the Northeast US. If you're interested in getting tickets for any of these shows, visit Andy's Linktree, which can be found in the show notes of this episode or on Andy's social media accounts. As always, thanks to you, the listeners, for tuning in to another episode. All of you listening to each episode is why our guests are getting bigger and bigger, so I can't thank you enough for your support. Make sure to leave a 5-star review wherever you listen and tell your friends to check us out. On Spotify, head on over to the Music of Guess That Record playlist, where you can hear songs discussed on the show. If you want to see the video versions of these amazing interviews, you can subscribe to our YouTube channel. I'm also announcing that we are launching a TikTok account where you can see highlights from each episode. You can find us there at Guess That Record. Lastly, make sure to follow us on Instagram, which is also at Guess That Record. Remember to keep rocking, and we'll see you on the next episode of Guess That Record.